Welcome to ReFed's webinar series following the roadmap to 2030, taking action to reduce US food waste by 50%, which digs deeper into key action areas from ReFed's roadmap to 2030 and the Insights Engine. Now, as many of you know, ReFed is a national nonprofit working to end food loss and waste across the US food system by advancing data-driven solutions. Our vision, like yours I'm sure, is a sustainable, inclusive, and resilient food system that makes the best use of the food that we grow. In February of this year, ReFed introduced two free resources that are available on our website, the ReFed Insights Engine and the Roadmap to 2030, both of which were created to help support the food system's efforts to cut food waste by 50% by the year 2030. The Insights Engine is an online hub for data and insights about food waste, featuring a detailed cost-benefit analysis of more than 40 food waste reduction solutions, estimates on the causes and impacts of food waste in the US and within each state, and it's built analyzing more than 50 public and proprietary data sets. This also does include a directory of more than 900 solution providers ready to partner on food waste reduction initiatives. We also introduced an updated version of the 2016 roadmap to reduce US food waste called the Roadmap to 2030. It introduces a framework of 7 key action areas to help guide the food system in achieving the 2030 reduction goal. And the solutions we analyze in the Insights Engine fall under those 7 key action areas, each of which has been a discussion focus for this webinar series over the last 6 months. ReFed's analysis shows that by implementing all these solutions with an annual investment of approximately $14 billion, we'd see a reduction of 45 million tons of food waste, more than half of what's currently being generated each year. And there's a range of other benefits like GHG emission reductions, water savings, jobs created, and meals recovered. And the net financial benefit of all this would be approximately $73 billion each year. Our goal with this webinar series has been to get all this information off the page and bring it to life so that it can support your food waste reduction efforts. Today, we'll be talking about the 7th key action area in ReFed's roadmap to 2030, which is recycle anything remaining. And as we've been doing throughout the series, we'll not only walk you through what we've learned from the data, but we've also assembled a team of experts who will help us bring that data to life through their own lived experiences and perspectives. This is the final installment of the series, and we're excited for you to be here today. Whether you joined us for all 7 installments of this series or just one, and it's okay if you joined for just one, our hope is that you walked away with 3 main takeaways. 1, food waste is a system-wide problem affecting all stages of the supply chain, as well as spaces in between. And frequently, the waste that happens at one stage comes as a direct result of something or a decision that has happened at a previous stage. So we all need to work together to address this challenge. 2, solutions already exist to address all these challenges. We've heard about so many innovations throughout the series, and that's something that I'm actually super interested about, from edible coatings to recyclable sensors to new technology platforms leveraging AI. There are so many solutions to address food waste, and honestly, they're all really cool. And 3, food waste offers a win-win opportunity for funders, and I don't want to forget that includes corporate adopters. A lot of discussions in this series highlighted the critical need of funders of all types, private, public, and philanthropic, to provide support to get these ideas off the ground. There are so many opportunities for capital providers in this space, and many of these opportunities do come with investment returns, along with their impact metrics, such as greenhouse gas emissions avoided, jobs created, and equivalent meals recovered. Our previous webinars covered the first 6 key action areas in the roadmap to 2030, which include optimize the harvest, enhance product distribution, and so on and so forth. But today, we'll be talking about the 7th and final key action area, recycle anything remaining. And when we say recycle anything remaining, what we mean is capturing nutrients. Oh, sorry about that. I think my computer is crashing on me.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. This is Nora. We can hear you.
This is, this is Jeff. I will jump in where Alejandro was dropped off. When we're talking about recycle anything remaining, what we mean is capturing nutrients, energy, and other residual value by finding the highest and best use for any food or food scraps that remain. So this is from the ReFed Insights engine. You can see that the top destination for surplus food is landfill. 34% of surplus food ends up going there. About 17% is never harvested, and about 16% goes to other waste destinations like the sewer, land application, incineration, and dumping. About 16% goes to compost, and just under 10% becomes animal feed. I want to stop for a moment here and highlight that the US EPA recently announced a reinterpretation of its 2030 food loss and waste reduction goal. The goal was originally developed in 2015 in partnership with USDA, and while the 50% reduction remains the same, there's now a revised 2016 baseline that includes any food leaving the human supply chain, which will be measured as any food going to landfill, combustion, sewer, anaerobic digestion, composting, or land application. This is a significant shift from the previous interpretation, which considered only the food going to landfills or combustion facilities as waste to be cut in half. So what does this change mean? First, it means the EPA's definition now integrates better with USDA and other interagency programs, and is now aligned with the international interpretation for SDG 12.3 and other frameworks. Second, it means that now that the definition of food loss and waste has expanded, the ambition of the 2030 goal has increased, which is a good thing. And third, it means that EPA recognizes that while food waste management practices such as composting and anaerobic digestion will always be necessary solutions for recycling non-preventable food waste, the ultimate goal should be preventing food waste from being generated in the first place. ReFed will be participating in a fireside chat with EPA about all this on December 1st at 12 p.m. Eastern. We'll include information about that in our follow-up email to all of you. And I also want to note that ReFed's Insights engine analysis is based on the original interpretation of the 2030 goal, which does include composting and anaerobic digestion as solutions in the recycle anything remaining action area. There are a couple of reasons for this. First, it's a new change. We're still reviewing the related data. Also, food waste management is still important since there will always be bones, peels, and wasted food. So today we're looking at the highest and best uses for that. We're showing that by implementing solutions to recycle anything remaining, including composting and anaerobic digestion, we can divert just under 21 million tons of wasted food annually. This would cut greenhouse gas emissions by 6.8 million metric tons. The annual net financial benefit of adopting solutions to recycle anything remaining would be approximately $300 million, which is relatively low compared to the $2.2 million investment needed. But this speaks to the importance of public funding to expand waste disposal infrastructure and other solutions, which may provide a public good, but are not as economically viable for investors looking for a certain return. So what are the top solutions in this key action area? Well, according to our Insights engine analysis, here's how they stack up based on net financial benefit and total food waste tons diverted. Solutions in this action area range from mature practices of feeding food scraps to livestock to modern innovations such as insect farming, and innovative markets for waste-derived bioplastics, agricultural inputs, and other industrial uses model the development of circular economies that can capitalize on existing wasted materials for new products, fuels, packaging materials, and more. Finally, we just want to highlight the important role of policy in this key action area. Policy has a critical role to play in disincentivizing, limiting, or banning food from landfills, along with incentivizing state and local organic waste bans. Policies can also eliminate restrictions and barriers to feeding food scraps to animals, increase landfill tipping fees, and importantly, to provide financial support and reduce permitting barriers for food waste reduction infrastructure. In fact, there is a placeholder in the current reconciliation bill for funding that could go to some of this infrastructure. So we'll see where that goes. So what does all of this actually equate to on the ground? Well, that's what our panelists will be discussing today. And with that, I am excited to introduce our moderator for today's session. Nora Goldstein is editor and publisher of Biocycle Connect and biocycle.net, the Organics Recycling Authority. Nora is in her 5th decade of working at Biocycle, and we're excited to note that she received the U.S. Composting Council's High Kellogg Award for outstanding service to the composting industry and the American Biogas Council's Biogas Visionary Award. So thank you for being here today, Nora. I will hand things off to you.
Well, thank you so much, Jeff, and welcome everybody to today's webinar. It's morning for some of you. I'm Nora Goldstein. I'm editor of Biocycle and encourage you all to sign up for Biocycle Connect, our e-newsletter. We cover the full range of topics that ReFed presented across its roadmap and insight engine areas. But our specialty and what we're known for is what we're talking about today, which is recycling anything remaining. So one of the things Alejandro said was how the solutions are so cool, and there's no shortage of coolness in our panel today. So I'm excited to introduce you to our 3 panelists. We have Abhijit Baroli with Electroactive. And Abhijit is a chemical engineer by training, working in the area of waste to energy, hydrogen production, and biomass conversion. And prior to launching Electroactive, he was a scientist at the Oak Ridge National Laboratory for many years, working on biotech solutions for producing fuels and chemicals. Our next panelist today is Justin Kameen with Do Good Foods. And Justin is a planet forward entrepreneur. And I have to say, I love the term planet forward entrepreneur, who co-founded Do Good Foods with his brother Matthew to combat climate change by fighting food waste. The company builds on the family's 40-year heritage of solving macro environmental problems through big infrastructure solutions. And our third panelist is Laura Holmes with Cerro. Laura leads venture development and capitalization strategies for Cerro, which is a worker-owned food waste recycling cooperative corporation based in the Boston area that establishes successful source separation composting programs for large-scale commercial and institutional generators. And Laura has been involved in leading economic development initiatives in the greater Boston area for over 20 years. So I'd like to kick us off with the first question for today. And if we could, why don't we go in the order I introduced you, and then we'll mix things up as we go along. And the first question is to tell us about the work that you're doing through your solutions to decrease food waste through recycling anything remaining. So Abhijit, if we could start with you.
Thank you very much, Nora. It's exciting to be here. So at Electroactive, we have developed a solution to use nature's secrets combined with engineering to produce a zero-emission fuel, hydrogen, from food waste. So in our process, food waste is broken down by a community of microorganisms into electrons, protons, and carbon dioxide. And we use a liquid derived from the food waste to feed into our system, which is coming out after solid liquid separation or some form of pre-treatment of the food waste. The electrons and protons are then combined together to make hydrogen in the same device with application of an external voltage, which is about half of the electricity required for water electrolysis. So we are able to produce hydrogen at much more electrical efficiency. This can be thought about as a process similar to anaerobic digestion, but instead of using methanogenic microbes, we use microbes which are able to produce electrons and protons to convert the food waste into these entities, which are then converted to hydrogen. So it has, potential to make zero-emission fuel while also preventing methane, which can have potential implications of its own on climate change.
Excellent, excellent. And Justin, if you could share with us your solution and today.
There we go. Off of mute now. So great to be here. Really excited. So Justin came on, one of the co-CEOs of Do Good Foods. As Nora mentioned, our background on our family is that we've built, owned, and operated about $4 billion worth of infrastructure nationwide. And we co-founded Do Good Foods about 5 years ago to really take an infrastructure approach to solve what we deemed as what we're all here to talk about is one of the biggest problems in the food system, which is food waste. And we wanted to really focus on to how do we upcycle the food from all of the retailers and supermarkets across the country into what the EPA stated as the next best usage of that food, which is into animal feed. And after 5 years of development, we have successfully fully commercialized and scaled that platform to a recent investment from Nuveen of $169 million into our production facility, where we're able to keep all of the food from 450 supermarkets, about 160 tons we are picking up every single day, putting it through our process where we can create a nutriently consistent dried animal feed product the very next day. And what's so exciting is that that feed product can then go into the existing feed mill infrastructure to grow healthy, sustainable, and a sustainable animal protein system at scale, which is what we're creating a completely closed loop system with from our retailers to then the launch of that product, which will be called Do Good Chicken, where each chicken now saves over 3 pounds of greenhouse gases and over 4 pounds of surplus grocery food, really making climate change and this whole notion of how do we fight food waste, engaging with the consumer, where they can simply buy a piece of chicken and now know that they're actually fighting food waste and combating climate change from their kitchen. So we're excited to really start to now scale that nationwide, creating these macro closed loop systems.
Excellent, excellent. No, both very exciting, very entrepreneurial. And Laura, tell us a little bit about Cerro and your solution.
Hi, everyone. Laura Holmes from Cerro CoOp. Proud to be part of a worker-owned cooperative business out of Roxbury, Massachusetts. This is a Black and brown, low-income, eco-impacted community, an environmental justice community. We've been, over the last 7 years, been figuring out how to help anyone who makes food waste in the Metro Boston area develop systems for source separation and highest and best use for those products. We work with our grocery store customers, for example, to set up 3-bin systems. So we prioritize feeding people first, and the remaining we commit to re-earthing at local farms. So we too are part of creating the literal food loop, but we're motivated by our desire to create alternative, local, decentralized infrastructure. So our solution will ultimately bring us to community composting and community anaerobic digestion, which is really appropriate in urban areas, as long as you're practicing source separation. So we have developed our industry. We have made great strides in our area. We're all about being local and would love to work with others around the country who want to build their local systems. We know that we can have that food loop operating. We can help cities and towns divert their trash from landfill and incineration to restore soils. We support urban agricultural projects, and about 30% of the food we harvest is directly taken to feed cows and pigs at local farms as well. So that's where we are. We create good green jobs. So we're more and more involved in policies, just like my colleagues here on the panel, that really work to reduce harm and to mitigate social and environmental injustice. And to, while we do that, develop green industries that can be really good jobs in our communities, connected with food loop economies, circular economies, and part of microgrids and all these kinds of solutions where we can keep our own lights on and keep our communities healthy. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. And you queued up the next question that we wanted to address today, which is transportation. And to date, some of the solutions have further distances to travel from the point of generation and collection to where the facilities are. And Laura, you just described how Cerro really focuses on keeping it local. What I'd like to ask all of you, and Laura, if we could start with you, since just to build on your answer, is how do your companies and cooperatives address the tension to reduce greenhouse gas emissions as much as possible in the process, in the day-to-day operation? So Laura, if you could just build a little bit more on that. It sounds like that's a number one in just in terms of how you scale.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the worst part about the business that we're in right now is that our haulers, our trucks are burning diesel. However, when we start building a Boston, put an anaerobic digester on an acre of land in Boston, we can turn food scraps into clean renewable gas. At the same time, we can be powering 200 houses in the neighborhood, for an example of how the varied uses for the captured gas. And, I'm not a professional, I don't operate a composting facility myself, but the folks that we work with know that with good composting land management practices, you have very, very little methane escape, and that people who are good at it, and I know there's a lot of people out there people know how to do this, the technology is there. Windrow composting done well does not release that dangerous methane into the environment.
Excellent. Justin, how about you with the collection routes you have to travel to collect the food waste?
Yeah, so with the name of Do Good, obviously that is an ESG focused platform through and through, from the start of the time that we pick up the food to the moment that we convert the food into the animal feed and throughout the entire system and cycle. So we're picking up from about 450 supermarkets, but within a 100 to 150 mile radius of each one of our production facilities. So it is amazingly logistically efficient that we are collecting that food every 2 or 3 days. Also equally as important is that food is kept in the cold chain. So we are actually maximizing the value of those nutrients. And when it comes to our processing facility, we don't have any byproducts. We don't create any methane from that food. We convert 100% of that food into a dried animal feed the very next day and maximize the value of those nutrients that those farmers put into creating that food. So it's really the next best usage of this product that we're picking up from the supermarkets, really taking into account all of the environmental problems of kind of putting that into landfill, as we all know, right, where it creates methane, and really figuring out the right solution that we deem as to how do we maximize the value of those nutrients. Part of that is making sure that it's kept in the cold chain from start to finish, and then dehydrated essentially into a way that's then usable into the animal feed the very next day, is how we're really solving that and really addressing how do we really fight the fight on food waste.
Sure, thank you. And just a very fast follow-up. It's have you looked at using any renewable fuels like renewable natural gas, or going to electric, which is generated perhaps by solar or
absolutely renewables? We our background in our family is we were big energy developers, and then we built about 125 megawatts of solar. So renewables is key and critical from us as a company. Our facility, we are buying 100% renewable energy, so that's exciting. And then we want to continue to set the bar and continue to get better every single day. So we are actively working with our logistics providers to figure out ways, as it becomes economically and viable, to utilize electric trucks and to ensure that we continue to get better every day, because the world needs it and we need to continue to be the leaders here.
Excellent, thank you. And Abhijit, how about you in terms of reducing the GHG emissions as much as possible?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. Transportation is certainly a huge component of the greenhouse gas emissions. So we have been thinking about this for a while, and what we have done is developed a solution which is modular and scalable to produce the hydrogen from the food waste. And this results in a distributed solution. So since food waste as well as fuel use is distributed, we have developed a way to actually make this potentially on-site, And also this can reduce the need for transportation and of the waste long distance. So this is a solution which can not only produce hydrogen as a fuel for some of the vehicles and transportation, but also do it near or on site. So it reduces that emissions from transportation. And the hydrogen then can be used not only for transportation, but also maybe because there are some grocery stores which are interested in converting or taking care of their food waste. So one of the business use case is potentially converting that waste into hydrogen for their forklifts to operate in their warehouses. The other solutions can be, there is also a need for energy storage, and we have, as you asked about renewable energy, it is intermittent, and solar and wind both are intermittent. So we could potentially use that as well as a way to store the energy in the form of hydrogen. This is one of the solutions for the hydrogen economy. And eventually, as we grow and build the hydrogen economy, there may be other potential options, including heating and so on for the fuels such as hydrogen. So there are a lot of business use cases which will become feasible over time to reduce the emissions. Secondly, one of the things we've been doing is trying to develop a business use case and innovate also in the sort of business use case by trying to fit our solution in the current infrastructure. So today we are doing a lot of composting and also moving towards the hydrogen economy. So what we do is actually reduce the weight of that food waste by extracting the liquid out of the food waste to make our hydrogen potentially on site or near site. And that does result in some additional solids that are left over, which can be less than 10-20% of the original weight of the food waste. So you have lower transportation requirement for that remaining material as well. So it can sort of fit into all of these kind of issues that are there can be solved through this distributed kind of solution. So we are really excited about this potential option, and to integrate with even some of our other panels which are working on technologies to solve this problem. By our expertise is in making hydrogen and making fuel out of the food waste, but definitely it has to be integrated with other solutions that are being developed today.
Very exciting. In my journalist hat, I would love to talk to you all in more detail. But Justin, I want to ask you, your Do Good Foods has, as you mentioned in the introduction, raised a significant amount of capital. And I'm just curious, in the process of raising capital, what trends you've seen as you were out there looking for investments, and what is needed, in your opinion, to increase investment in these kinds of innovations that we're hearing about right now?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I mean, certainly raising capital is never the fun part of the business, but obviously a pretty key and critical and necessary part of the business. Obviously, our background of our family kind of helped and enabled that from the credibility perspective. But I think what investors, which I think we all need to continue to focus on, is the only way to have the greatest impact in the world is to actually have the greatest economics. And it has to be economically viable and feasible for every single party involved, right? As much as we all want to talk about sustainability, at the end of the day, it's driven by the economics. And that's really how we start to change society quickly and efficiently at the speed that we all know that we need to get to. We can't wait 10, 20, 30 years. We can't be claiming that we want to do something in 2050. We got to do things now, and we got to do things at scale. And the only way to really do so is to make it an economically viable situation and solution first and foremost, followed by the sustainability. So when we talk to retailers, we're making it an economic decision first for them to provide the food waste to us, to the farmers, to them, the consumers. They're all engaged in that, and they're all profitable or engaging in the right solution at the right price points. And so that's the capability. That was the big unlock for this institutional capital to come behind us and say, great, we can realistically sit in front of you now and say, over the next 4 or 5 years, we can help solve food waste from supermarkets nationwide because we've figured out that entire system. And then from a Do Good Foods perspective, all we're asking consumers to do is if you like chicken, and we'll get into other products, but first we're starting with Do Good Chicken. It tastes great, it's priced right in line, and this one helps save the world, the other ones don't. And so how do we really engage with the consumers to be a part of that solution? That's another big aspect of this flywheel, that we got to recognize that the consumer habits and the consumer interest and the consumer purchasing dynamics can really be a part as this whole upcycle movement is created and continues to grow. We got to get engaged with the consumers to be a part of the solution, which then therefore showcases to the corporations and the finance partners that people really care about this and that they're willing to be a part of it.
Excellent. Quick follow-up to that in terms of specifically the grocery stores. Many have been serviced by food waste recycling for many years. There was a report that came out in 90 or 91 by I think then it was one of the grocery industries. It was a white paper on how to divert to composting. So I'm curious today, in today's environment, what sort of momentum you've gained with specifically the grocery industry on your solution. What is it they see in what you're offering, that is so compelling for them to join forces? And I should say, if you could I'm just curious to have you elaborate a little bit there, and then we'll keep moving.
Yeah, well, we pick up the food for free. So that's first and foremost the economically viable solution for them. And then we provide them designated bins. So they're kept in the cold chain, one for the meats, one for the produce. And then we pick that up every couple of days. So it's a very simple and elegant solution for them. Their store employees tend up loving it because they're now part of that solution. And recognizing that they're creating this closed loop system where then we're handing them back a product onto their retail shelf that they know that their consumers are desiring as well from a retail chicken perspective. So it's really about that engagement. And like I said, we have already 450 supermarkets that will be coming into our main production facility in Pennsylvania, and then start to build out the nationwide network pretty quickly and efficiently shortly thereafter.
Wonderful, wonderful. Lauren, Abuji, pilots, how important are pilot projects to getting adoption of what you're proposing for your solutions? And so Abuji, first you and then Laura, have you been running pilots with Department of Energy or any of your former colleagues to develop the solution?
Yeah, pilots are very important as, this is a relatively new technology. And so what we're trying to do is develop these pilots. And again, food waste is a very complex kind of material, and there are different kinds of food waste. So what we have been doing is developing a pipeline of potential pilots, which will be executed in the next year or two. We have already started working on building our demo units, and we are planning to start one in the next couple of months. So what we intend to do is basically demonstrate the technology for different kind of food waste, starting with the simple ones and then going to complex. And by that, I mean, food waste can come in all forms, like it can be a liquid waste, for example, all the way to a solid waste. So we are starting with the liquid materials, which are feed into our system, and demonstrate the technology at scale. And then we will go to the solid materials as well. So we have 3 or 4 pilots in the pipeline, which we'll be executing in the next 2 years. So yeah, very important for us, and that's what we are working on right now.
Excellent, thank you. And Laura, because I know you and been tracking, I know you've been looking to get a pilot related to community scale anaerobic digestion going in the Boston area. And I'm just curious where that stands and why that's so important to pilot it for those either in the political or the regulatory phase, but also just showing that as a viable solution.
Sure. Well, let me give a few examples of pilots that we've had experience with, because I think pilots are great, but pilots also have to be really thought through well and intentional and consider the goals. I've seen pilots start off, and then when they're brought to scale, they lose all the community benefits that came along with the pilot, and they end up getting greenwashed or go for something that's a cheaper false solution. Those kinds of things can happen with pilots. On the other side, and what we have more experience with directly, is that pilots often help with the culture shift. See, we're at the very front end. You guys have these brilliant technologies, and I love it. I'm very excited, but I want to work with both of you. But we spend much more of our time at the customer end, at the source. Often it's post-consumer. Lots of times it's also pre-consumer in terms of food producers, food distributors, and grocery stores as well. So those are most of our customers. And we also have some breweries and stuff like that. So we go anywhere between 1 ton of very consistent material to 50 or 100 tons a week at institutions, universities, hospitals, places where a lot of waste is generated. And it's the most challenging food waste unless people adopt the culture of source separation, right? So that's an awful lot of where I spend my time. And then on the other end of it, yes, you're right, Nora, we look to do pilots. So we do pilots like with a school system, and we'll start off with a couple of schools that they identify and develop that partnership and develop the ways to ease the adoption. It's amazing how that can go from, you know, a small pilot of 5 or 6 schools to community drop-off kind of a project, or getting all the businesses in town to go green, because now what you're doing is you're bringing in a lot more people into this change of culture. And I believe that it's really in there that it's not so much kind of a economic profit, but over the long term, it'll be a planetary profit. It'll be health benefits. It'll be the kinds of things I wish that those with the money to invest would consider more in their investment decisions, quite frankly. I mean, of course, economic viability is important, but let's not lose track of those other goals that we also want to accomplish. As to the project you started with, Nora, the community scale digester, we have yet to site our first digester and look forward to doing several of them. And again, some of this is culture shift, but we have a shovel-ready project that combines anaerobic digestion with 10,000 square feet of greenhouse for growing food, that gives good jobs, and these are in low-income Black and brown communities, teaches people farming skills, and makes livings for lots of family. Then we teach composting and applying composting in permaculture kinds of settings, and opening up a lot more green jobs in that area. And we have another partner who provides about 3,000 meals a day to seniors and children in our city. So you can see that's the kind of food loop we have a shovel-ready project for, and I'm hoping for both strong infrastructure bills and strong green investment, legislation, not only on the federal level, but all across the country. And that's why I'm sitting in webinars like this, because I believe in that kind of a future where we can have these circular, complete economies that completely eliminate waste. We'll stop exporting our waste and we'll stop importing our food. Yeah, and that's the world I look forward to being part of.
Wonderful. And you just addressed one of the other questions we had for you on the policy side. And if we have time, we'll circle back to that. A question for all of you. Let's see, Abhijit, we'll start with you. What challenges and barriers still exist to scaling these types of solutions, and what's needed to overcome them? So Abhijit, you go first.
Yeah, in our kind of solution, the challenge typically, and the question we get from people is, what is the best material you have for your technology, and whether you can use different kind of food waste, because they can change from day to day. And so we have an inbuilt solution for that, which is that the microbial community that we're using is very diverse, and it's a consortium of microbes which is able to handle all kinds of materials that you can throw at them, very similar to anaerobic digestion, but coupled to a different kind of microbes. And we've done quite a bit of work on this already while I was at Oak Ridge National Lab, and we've done a demonstration of this technology even for biomass kind of waste, including corn store, ag residues, even algae for that matter. to produce hydrogen. So we are pretty confident in terms of trying to manage different kinds of waste. And that can be a significant issue to scale, because we can demonstrate the technology, but if it doesn't apply to a different waste, then we are stuck. But we have an inbuilt pathway to address that.
Excellent. Justin, how about you in terms of challenges and barriers to scale?
Yeah. So as mentioned, over the past kind of 5 years, we've been at this with 20 of our own engineers and trying to figure this out as to how do you take 160 tons of meats, fruits, and vegetables. And to answer someone's question, the supermarkets depackage on site, and we pick up that food, and how do you convert that into a nutriently consistent dried animal feed product? So there's been a lot of learnings and a lot of understandings as to how do you now do that. And what's been exciting is that, obviously I mentioned, we've turned on our production facility in Pennsylvania, now converting and showcasing that entire process at that scale. That now it's quite exciting from our perspective, that I look at our biggest excitement, which I don't look at a hurdle, I look at an excitement as to bringing to life this whole brand of Do Good Foods, and where it is good for plate and planet, where our products are a net positive for the world, not a net negative, and engaging and empowering the consumer. 70 to 80% of consumers are raising their hand nowadays and saying, what can I do to help? Right? And we need all solutions. We need plant-based proteins to continue to scale, but we also need to recognize that what we're doing is essentially, I mean, we're taking our leftovers and feed it to chickens and pigs and pets out back. They grow great, they grow healthy in this closed loop system. We're now just doing so at a large scale infrastructural level that can work with the largest retailers and the growers, and finally empower the consumers to simply say, I still want to eat chicken. I still want to have that product on my dinner plate. And now I can actually do good. So it's really engaging with the consumers, engaging with the thought leadership to recognize that we can truly solve and make a massive dent in the food waste problem. Specifically, we're focused on the supermarkets, and convert it into a unique, sustainable protein system that is actually at scale, will be nationwide relatively quickly, and really hopefully put the line in the sand where we can always get better from here on out, and continue to improve the system, recognizing that we have to take into hand the consumers, the environment, and the economics, and really create a more just and a more fair food system for all.
Excellent, excellent. And Laura, same question, but it's intriguing. I was thinking about this. For you, scaling isn't necessarily getting bigger and bigger at a specific spot, but I imagine scaling sort of more horizontally to see more of this approach going on. But I'm putting words in your mouth. That may not at all be what you, you see.
That's right. We do believe we've got to go to scale, but we see scale as a decentralized networks of communities. These can be as small as neighborhood circles that also connect to larger circles encompassing cities, encompassing regions. But, we imagine, that cities and towns, instead of having to get all their waste trucked out and paying ever increasing fees, those landfills are going to get closed. The incinerators need to get closed. And their prices are going up and up and up and up for exporting their waste. So I see communities coming together. I'm consulting with a bunch of different communities in Massachusetts who want to figure out solutions that they can localize or regionalize, so that by sharing resources, collaborating, and combining in response to local needs, primarily environmental justice needs, economic and way of life needs, we can have connected networks like this, where we don't, like I said, we don't have to export our trash. We instead use it to and derive local benefit from it in the form of energy, soil replenishing products, and there's one more. The energy, the compost, and the capture of the gas. And we can have these circles can be adapted. So if it's not a greenhouse that you want to heat, maybe what you want to do is create gas, or you want to hook up e-car charging stations, or you want to direct wire, you want to link it into a microgrid. I'm part of one project where we're talking about combining anaerobic digestion and hydrogen, and have that also support community farming. Vertical farming hasn't even started to take off. So the keys for being able to produce new goods, upcycle whatever is wasted after we've reduced whatever can be eaten by humans or animals, or left in fields, which happens to a lot of waste, as we know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. Over the course of the ReFed webinar series, panelists have talked about the importance of partnerships, and just in the interest of time, Justin, Do Good Foods has a partnership with somebody who I know I've heard speak through ReFed events, Sam Cass, who worked in the Obama White House as a chef, but just curious in terms of the importance of partnerships like this to all of your enterprises, but maybe again, just in the interest of time, Justin, if you could, talk about the benefit of that partnership.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Sam is a UN 12.3 food waste warrior and champion. So gaining the knowledge and the understanding of him, and then his connectivity and his thought leadership is key and critical. We then got people like Ann Vanneman, the former U.S. Secretary of Ag, and Howard Buffett, and many others that all joined suit as well. And that lends a lot of credibility to when we do walk into the retailers or the finance departments of groups and stuff. So I think there's a never short list of people that speak the right and have the right focus in life. That I think that becomes quite powerful from a messaging perspective. And it also, from an entrepreneur's perspective, it also continues to give you fire and fuel, and the perseverance to recognize that this problem of food waste is bigger than any one of us, right? This problem is bigger than any one of our companies. This is a collective, unified mission for all of us across this country and hopefully across this world, that we all know that this is a food waste. The 40% that we grow is thrown away, and that's a disgrace, right? We got to upcycle it and maximize the human usage of that food. And then to Laura's point, what's the next best usage of that food, and how do we continue to create a better, healthier system? Because in the next 20 or 30 years, we need that to happen. This isn't a matter of we hope and we wish that this occurs. We absolutely need this to happen. And I truly think that the future of food is really climate.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more with all of you. Laura, you mentioned a couple minutes ago about at the federal level, the Compost Act, which we hope gets, that's more of within the infrastructure. But I just wanted to ask you, because I think, I know, Justin, you're in Pennsylvania and I'm in Pennsylvania. We don't have any food waste bans here. Obviously, I'm not sure if Tennessee is your home. I doubt you do. But Laura, you're in Massachusetts, which was really the first state to implement food waste disposal ban without a proximity limitation. In other words, you had to anywhere in the state. It wasn't that you had to be 20 miles. And entrepreneuring in a state with a food waste ban, what's your advice to others who are in states without bans, and how important, or maybe not important, such a law is helpful?
It's terrifically helpful. Thanks for the question, Nora. I've been happy to be part of the organic subcommittee at the DEP and kind of been able to watch this unfold in our state. And any kind of a policy that helps people reduce waste and adopt highest and best use policies is worth going after. We are still so much in early stages, and with many early stage policy accomplishments, there are also some cautionary lessons, which is what I seem to be spending a lot of my time now that we're 7 years into our food waste ban. What we accomplished and we're part of, we just completed, the DEP just completed and had approved by the governor, our 2020 to 2030 solid waste master plan. And so I had come into the work sort of in the middle of the last 10-year solid waste plan, and in 2014 got that any generator of 2 or more tons of food had to divert it. However, part of the cautionary is there was not a lot of regulatory thought put to how does that get diverted, so that we do not have that hierarchy that's much more widely understood when it comes to where is the food waste and what's the best use for what that food that we see in the trash cans and in the boxes at food banks and in Cerro compost containers. You know, people kind of understand that, I think, more so than we understand the difference between animal feed, composting, source separated anaerobic digestion, landfill, and flushing it down the sewer and using wastewater treatment digesters. So we're having to do a lot of education around that, but I made some presentations recently. There is now a zero waste legislative committee at the state level, joint session, Senate and House, that are considering helping with some of this stuff. The DEP never has enough funding to really enforce it. So we've had to do a lot of our own consumer education. It wasn't like all of a sudden our phone rang off the hook. Oh, there's a waste ban, let me comply.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I'm gonna try to end you there because we're almost at our deadline or our time limit, but I want you each to answer this question as our listeners and participants walk away from this panel. What is the, let me try this question again, sorry. If people walk away from this panel with one learning or key unlock, what should that be? So what is the key takeaway you want participants today to hear? And let's just go in our original order. Abhijit, you go first.
Thank you, Nora. So we see this as a beginning of the circular bioeconomy, and we look at 21st century as a development of clean fuels that is necessary, and we are doing that. And this can be a pathway to really developing the whole bioeconomy, where you produce hydrogen and then also other byproducts that we need for our society. So I think for me, that will be the message for me. So we can produce hydrogen from food waste, and then it can go to a number of other things that our society uses today.
Excellent, Justin.
Someone once said that food waste is a luxury across the United States. And I think our goal and our focus, and I think this whole decade with ReFed and every solution kind of coming to fruition, from the farm level to the retailers to the consumers, that this should be the end of this. And I think we all can drive towards that at a scalable solution across all aspects of society to really recognize that we can't have this be 40% in 10 years, right? It's got to be a small percentage. And the whole terminology that food waste is a luxury, it was a interesting thought process that a lot of the world would still be eating this food. And how do we then create a better system for maximize the human donations that can occur? Then how do we continue to upcycle this and create these closed loop systems that we know are key and critical to the survival of the human species, essentially?
Yeah, no, so important. And Laura, last word, what do you want people to, the one learning or key to unlock?
I just want to thank the almost 200 folks that we've had with us. I wish I could see all of your faces. I think what I'd want folks to take away is start where you are. You've got influence somewhere. If you're working at a local municipality or an agency or wherever, there's something you can do to aim towards zero waste. The first thing that happens so you don't even have to be involved with food production or consumption in any way, although most of us eat, so we need to care. I think that everybody should do what you can. If you start moving towards zero waste, the first thing you'll come to is let's reduce food waste. It's the largest part of our waste stream. It's the thing that we can impact. We can impact it, whether it's at the household level, but there's lots more we can do on the community level. You can set up a neighborhood compost drop-off. You can work with your cities and town to take up, dealing with food waste in the best way you can for your community. And it can be an equalizer, can be part of that solution as well. I welcome people to reach out to me if you want to talk about anything, whether it's policy, whether it's trying to get programs going where you are. or whether you need somebody who knows composting services in the Boston area, get in touch with me.
Wonderful. Well, really, thank you all. This was not just super interesting and a lot of learning, but also really fun to see the different perspectives. And I want to thank ReFed for the opportunity to moderate. And I think I'm handing it back to Alejandro. Thank you.
Yeah, you are. Thank you, Nora. And thank you, panelists, for your insights and candor. We appreciate all that you're doing. I want to say a big thank you to all the people who attended today. We'll be sending out an email with a link of the recording of today's webinar, along with some highlights of the discussion. And if you have any questions or feedback about today's discussion, please feel free to reach out to us at insights@refed.com. Remember, this was the final installment of the 7-part series, digging into the key action areas. You can view recordings of each of them on the ReFed website, but we'll also be including links of those recordings in this email. So be sure to check those out if you weren't able to make the live discussions. And please take a moment to answer the question popping up on your screen right now. Your input would help us with planning future events. Before you go, I want to remind you all to sign up for the new ReFed Food Waste Action Network. It's a free network for people from across the food system and diverse backgrounds to connect and engage about food waste reduction, and we'd love for you to be a part of it. And register for the Food Waste Solutions Summit presented by ReFed. It's coming up next May. It's in the great city of Minneapolis, and it's going to be in person. We're so excited to see all of you there in real life and not just seeing each other from computer screens. So go on refed.org to get information on how to register. Thank you all again, and have a great rest of your day.